and welcome to Splashing Paint. Today I'll be painting the Poloris Team Bearpode from Corvus Belli's Infinity. I've decided to go with Militarum green. I went the contrast route in order to base coat and shade simultaneously. Plus contrast paints tend to flow nicely into recesses. Since the Polaris Team is part of Cosmoflot and Ariadna Sectorial, I'm going to go with the basic military colors. I'll be using different greens and browns for this theme. I've recently discovered Infinity, and after a few intro games, I'm hooked. Coming from 40k and AOS, Infinity is a nice break. I don't have to field large armies, and one of the biggest selling points for me was that I roughly only needed 5 to 15 models. This of course depends on the game size, and as an added bonus, a standard 300 point game is playing on a 4x4 map. I love this contrast. It's my go-to for everything leather. It's almost like it was created for that in mind. Usually, you're not supposed to let it pool, but I really like the heavy stained leather look, so I'll leave it. I continue to splash it all over, covering the backpack and ammo pouches, making sure to stay within the lines. But when I do get messy, I just take a wet brush and clean it off. Now it's time to tackle the most important part, and Gore-Grunta Fur is my secret weapon. This is an easy choice for me. Besides the word fur being in the name, I wanted to go with a brown bear look. For me, when I hear lore about Planet Dawn, Ariadna's homeworld, I'm picturing harsh, dense woodlands full of man-eating wildlife. So a scary grizzly bear it is. And with a quick Google search and a few episodes of random nature shows, I can tell you that grizzly bears are the most aggressive and dangerous species of bear. And if that's not enough for you, this Bearpode's loadout is equipped with a huge trench hammer and a light shotgun. Time for some black Templar. I apply this to the pants, grenades, equipment, and guns. Another go-to contrast, this stuff is magic in a bottle. I probably use it on just about every model I paint. Crazy enough, this Bearpode is packing quite the arsenal. Not that you needed it, of course. I went a little outside the lines, but that's okay. A few wicks from a damp, clean brush, and I'm back on track to finish up the pants. I applied P3 Quicksilver to the trench hammer. I went with a bright silver base. I just find it easier to manage brighter metallics with controlled washes. That way I can skip the highlights. Next up is the armor plating. For this, I went with Arnie Painter's Field Gray. This particular gray to me has a green tint to it, keeping with the theme of military greens and browns. Plus I think it complements the green Militarum shade nicely. I'll cover the remaining armor plating. Don't forget the groin and knee pads. Wash time. I thin some Basilicanum gray and cover the trench hammer, removing any excess. This is where I remove the wash from certain raised edges, leaving it to pull in the recesses. Time for some armor striping. I went with P3 Cygnar Blue. I like blue, and felt that it would be a better choice than, say, a bright green. Back again with Quicksilver, for all the metallic details and chipping. This is the fun part, making sure to go around the entire model and highlighting all the metallic bits. I spent a few extra minutes on that sweet shotgun. Also decided to use this color and add weathering to the armor plating. I used the sponge technique and focus on the chest and shoulder plates. I figure it will receive the most damage via scraping against interior walls and doorways. Don't forget the metal clips on the bags and pouches. This has to be my favorite part of the entire painting and hobby process, basing. I want to go with an outdoor woodland theme, so I popped open a jar of Vallejo thick European mud. I usually apply this basing at the end of the session and come back the next day. This will allow the appropriate amount of time for the basing paste to set. I also like to make impressions in small craters. After the basing has dried overnight, I'll wash it down with some Agrax Earthshade, allowing it to pool in the recesses. Now it's time to highlight the base with Tyrant Skull. This dry brush paint has a yellow tint, giving the mud a pretty cool and natural look. Almost there. A few passes around Saturn with Army Painter's matte black. I usually do about 3 passes, not 7. And finally, the direction markings. I went with P3 Bog Moss. I really like the facing mechanics in Infinity. If a model is physically in line of sight to an enemy combatant, it can react, even if it's on your opponent's active turn. This will allow for both players to be engaged throughout the whole game. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please tap that like button and subscribe. A list of all the paints I've used will be in the description down below. If you all like, you could also hop over to my Instagram and see all the miniatures I've painted so far.